10 birds every week. So you got to have so many birds. All the ones you don't want. All the ones that get lost.
There's our happy couple. Hey, remember, Tim, cast way over here so you can land it over there. Hey, gentlemen, smile. You're going to be superstars. Hey, gang.
Hi.
Hey, Sherman. In October.
This is my favorite people.
Yeah, you said that to that other table.
On this table.
We've been doing it since 7.
Here's my favorite people on this table.
You said that over there, too.
Hey, don't spoil anything, all right? Who invited you anyway? Who invited you? Hey, you know, who invited you?
Not very complicated down here at the rocks or anywhere else we happen to fish as far as the fly line gear goes. This is just a random rod setup. Everybody knows what a fly line is. All fly line fishing means is that we're just using a hook at the end of the line. It's like this. This has a little tippet of fluorocarbon on it. Okay. 2.5 feet or so. And fishing bluefin, yellowfin, yellowtail, anything with that has good eyesight, you want to try and use the fluorocarbon. Okay. Now, we're set up a little different on this boat with our bait tanks. We have those big, for those of you that have been here, you know we have our big boxes. So there'll be the nets up there. One thing we ask that you do when you go pick out a bait, try not to leave the net in the well. You'll see some may have little blotches on them, maybe missing some scales. You want to make sure you pick out a bait that's really good, clean, you know. Did you want to get a seat somewhere, or are you good standing up?
There's chairs. I'm going to lay it down for a day all night.
Okay, no problem. No problem. I just want to check. Make sure you pick out a nice clean bait that's lively, no red blotchy, no scales. You see one like that, you look at it, it's not too good, just toss it over to the side. Take your time, pick a good bait. Okay. What I like to do is when I walk up to the bait tank, I like to have my rod. It's kind of hard to do with the overhead in here, but you know, I'll usually put this part of the rod under my arm so it balances, and I'm not poking the crew member that's on the tank. So this tip would just be kind of more overhead. Walk up to the bait tank and grab a bait. So by doing this, you got use of both hands. Pick out a nice bait, pin it on, then you can now walk to, there's a couple different ways there's a few different ways we like to hook our baits. There's the old standard, which is the nose hook right through the side of the nose. Pretty common. What's working really well, like on bluefin right now, shoulder hook bait. That causes the bait to kind of swim out and down a little bit. There's the collar hook, and then the butt hook. So there's 4 different ways we like to pin our sardines on. Now, rather than me try and show you here, if you have any questions on putting a bait on your hook, get with the guys at the start of the trip, and they will show you what's working best for that given stop. In other words, if we're fishing and the fish seem to be deep, a lot of times the butt hook works better. Sometimes if the fish are boiling close to the boat, a collar hook works a little better, or a shoulder hook. Okay, so depending on how the fish are reacting, that's probably going to dictate how you pin your bait on. Okay. A few things to remember: just make sure you check your drag. These lever drag rails, lever's got to be all the way back. You can play with your drag here a little bit. You set it up to strike. It's pretty, you know, that feels good. I do it by feel. Remember, you also have that, you can go forward to the detent, and it's going to give you more drag as you go forward. to where it's on this reel, it's almost locked down. So you have a little bit of play there. Make sure you check your drags, not too loose, not too tight. Most reels these days are lever drags, so they'll give you that ability to once you're hooked on a fish, to go forward a little bit. Obviously a star drag, which I like fishing with, is you can adjust that drag at any time while you're fishing. The thing about a lever drag, if you don't have enough drag, you have to put your reel in free spool to tighten your drag setting, then you go back. So what I like to do is I like to then use my finger as the drag, come back, tighten it up a little bit, then go back to your strike D10, and then you have a little more drag set down. But very small increments. If you ever do that, you don't want to just do is wind. But if you're using a J hook, okay, this happens to be a circle hook. No, it's a J hook. J hook is just that. It looks like a J. Circle hook, you're gonna have a little circle on it. Circle hooks, you don't really want to set the hook with a swing. J hook, let the line come tight, set the hook, wind on it, keep it tight, keep it tight. Okay. Circle hooks, just wind, don't set the hook. The reason being, circle hooks have a little bit more of a bend on the tip, and they're made to kind of turn and hook the fish in the corner of the mouth. Longliners use them on their long lines for that reason. We do not have so do not have one a jig. This happens to be a yo-yo jig we tend to use for yellowtail fishing. This is when we're out on Alijos Bay, we catch a lot of fish on the yo-yo iron. This is a heavy Salas 6X. Okay, that's a pretty heavy jig. You'll see that this happens to be another, what is this? This is a 7X. Can't even read what this is. Anyhow, basically very similar size, almost identical, but this jig is a light surface iron. So this is about probably a third the weight. The yo-yo jig tomorrow night, once we empty a tank or two of the sardine, we're going to try and get some bait. And the way we get that bait is we use the bait snaggers, and basically after dinner we'll probably get out there and try and snag a tank of bait. So we're going to fish till dark, have dinner, and then snag bait, and then hopefully right after that start catching yellowtail at night on dropper loops. At nighttime fishing, it's mainly dropper loop fishing. I would say it's probably 90 to 100% at night dropper loop. Okay. So, and there's times we get some really big fish on the dropper. That's why I use the 8-pound. We had a fish 70 pounds, yellowtail up to 70 pounds here a couple trips ago down here. We've been basically doing 3-day trips. And right before that, we had an 8-day trip. We had a 70-pound yellowtail. We had a 50-something pound yellowtail. We had quite a few 40s, 45s. So there's some dandies down here, some nice fish. So you're using heavier gear, heavier rod, bigger reel for the dropper loop fishing. Okay. The thing you got to remember about dropper loop fishing, gang, is I'm trying to hook anybody. Generally, there's current. Okay, so when you're fishing, you really got to pay attention to where your line is. Make sure you don't have any slack in the water, and be aware of people around you. So if you see that there's 2 or 3 hooked fish down there, and your line may be going that way, walk with it, wind up, make sure you kind of weave your way through, or wind it up and reset. In other words, resetting being maybe cast your bait or drop it in the mouth. The current's running back. I talked to Tim on the Royal Star. He said the first night they were down here, the weather was kind of sloppy and the current was going, so it made it tough. He said it was kind of a cluster, just trying to keep everybody straightened out. They had 8 to 10 yellowtail going. It was windy, it was current, a lot of current. That makes fishing tough. So hopefully when we get down here, the weather forecast is for good weather. So hopefully we won't have that extra factor to deal with. Dropper loop fishing, very effective nighttime and daytime. But at night, mostly dropper loop. Daytime, you have the ability to catch fish on jigs, fly line, and dropper loop. At night, the fish tend to stay on the bottom. We will catch at times the yo-yo jig works well at night as well. But to be honest, the amount of work and being dark and you don't see as well, to work a jig is a little more difficult. So my opinion is nighttime you should be fishing dropper loop. Okay? Any questions about the dropper? What we do with wahoo fishing. Now, we're going to have the trolling rods out there, but we usually troll the marauders. There's a few other type of jigs we troll, but for the most part, the marauders are what we troll. They're the large double hook, and you'll see them out here after. We get going around. So if you're on a troll team, make sure you know where you're at on the troll team. So obviously we'll start with team 1, 2, 3, and if you want to troll your own rod, no problem. Get with the guys, they'll make sure you got the correct lure to troll with. Okay? And they'll make sure you're tied on correctly. You want to use wire. Everything we troll around down here has wire on it. Okay? Once we get the wahoo stopped, hopefully we get a wahoo stop. I don't want to jinx myself, but get stopped on wahoo trolling, that's when we start fishing the jigs and the bomb. These call these the wahoo bombs, which are basically small wire leader. On this one here is just this is like a torpedo sinker that's been machined and painted and fancied up. I think this is a Jimmy's, if I'm not mistaken. That's a wahoo bomb, and I particularly really like these in particular because they tend to stick better in the wahoo's mouth than say an iron jig. There's times we use service iron with a single hook, or raider jigs are really good. Raider jigs are also a great way to go. Normally fishing a raider jig, we don't fish the wire. They're a longer steel jig, kind of like a metal jig like this. Okay, so these are almost like having a shorty wire leader. And what wahoo do, like when you're fishing jigs, they come up and wahoo tend to bite their bait or their prey in half. So if it's a bait fish, they come up. I've seen them bite like 3-4 pound skipjack right in half. Right? They come up, they bite them in half. They take the one piece and they usually swing back around and eat the second piece. So what they do a lot of times, they'll come up and bite the jig right in the center, and their mouth is kind of like a vice with teeth. So when they bite down on the jig, you want to just keep the line. You want to have a real tight drag, and you want to just try and grind this, slide this to hook the fish. Makes sense? They bite like this. You want to keep your tip right and just wind. Don't lift the rod. Wind. Pull the jig through. Hopefully you hook the fish. Okay. Raider jigs, some of the iron jigs have single hooks. And what they're going to do, you want to try and hook that fish right in the corner of the mouth. Wahoo have solid bone in their mouth, very, very sharp teeth. So that's a concern once we get the fish on the boat. Okay, so when we're fishing, I know a lot of guys have sandals on. When we're fishing wahoo, no sandals, no open toe. You can do the closed toe like that. Don't wear an open sandal. Okay, I've sewed on about 5 or 6 toes in my life. Just kidding. I've done a lot of medical procedures, but I haven't sewed on any toes. That's when we go in and take in, and Don Jose does it, or Don Julio does it. So, but in all seriousness, very sharp teeth. My son was out here a few years ago when he was still pretty green working, and he got bit, and he was so scared because I told people, hey, you gotta be careful. They bite you in the wrist. They bite you somewhere. You might have a bleeding problem. And he got bit, and he goes, Dad, am I gonna die? Am I gonna die? And he was cut pretty good. He got like 8 or 10 stitches. But it's something you have to be really careful about. Like we'll say wahoo coming over, and the other thing you want to be careful about with wahoo, they'll jump on the boat sometimes. One time I was sitting in Hurricane Bay with my partner Paul. We're sitting there having a cup of coffee, barely cracking daylight, and all of a sudden we didn't even have time to move. This wahoo jumped right up, right between us, and hit the bait tank. If it was a foot right or left, we would have got speared by a missile. That's scary. That's like 600 miles from Cabo. It's 2.5 days just getting up. So, anyway, we've had numerous ones jump on the boat. On the old boat I had, the Islander, one jumped through the window in the galley and ended up in the galley. It's something you need to be careful. And when I tell people, when you're winding your jigs, a lot of times, you know, wahoo will see your jig coming, but they don't hit it right away. They'll start following. All of a sudden, they'll take off after it. And if you lift your jig out of the water, they'll come out of the water to try and get the jig. I've seen them with the kite. We're flying the kite for tuna on one of the, you know, the banks down here, and the flyer will come out of the water, and the wahoo will actually eat it in the ear. Come out of the water, eat the flying fish, back in the water, and we're on. So, you know, they're pretty savvy as far as hunters go, and we just need to be careful. So stop your iron or your jig or your bomb, whatever you're fishing with, at the boat, count to 2 or 3 seconds, and then lift it over. I've also seen them where the guy stops his jig and he's waiting there, and all of a sudden the wahoo goes boom right in the side of the boat, and it's done. Yeah, without even a hook. Had that happen. So anyhow, those are some things you need to know about wahoo.
We're just approaching Alijos Rocks. It's about 6:30 in the morning, and we're kind of looking for wahoo right now. There's some big yellowtail here too. So let's see how it goes. There's that rooster to the left. Just got here too. There's 2 of us here. Hopefully we whack them. The next one.
Okay guys, let's go put the trollers in the water there. Reel, stand by.
Alijos in its glory. We're ready for some action. Nice and calm, beautiful conditions. Did you build that rod yourself?
I did not. Rusty hook.
Rusty hook. Alright, I hope you catch one. Go, Frederick, go. Go, Frederick, go. Kill that son of a bitch. There's another one. Kill that bitch. Kill that bitch. You know what? You're on a shark.
Why do you say that?
Because I caught one earlier. You're on a shark.
It's coming up.
Is it close? You can do it. You can do it. Hey, is your reel big enough?
It is bait, dog. Oh, I came off.
No, he didn't. It's a shark, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's coming up. Like, no.
He's acting just like mine.
Yeah.
Would you like to sit in my chair that I just sat in? Wipe my brow.
Is that the timeout chair if you catch a
Yeah, penalty box.
Yeah.
Was there any time out earlier for the little? We were trying to murder.
Come on, hurry up. I'm running out of tape. Don't put it in a second gear. It'll take forever.
Surprised the dolphin are scared of me.
Are you spinning that shark?
Bombing the field. Oh, he's okay.
See, just got one. Alijos Rocks. Fish in the bottom. Back up. Back.
That's a nicer one.
All right, let's try trolling again here. A little more daylight, maybe you'll.
Mark, stop resisting. Stop resisting the force.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Lewis, show me what you caught it on. That's a nice fish. Let's take a picture of it.
Put this away nicely.
Pulled on a bait school right now.
No, it's just a matter of time to find the right time. Everything's here.
We're on the Bluefin grounds in the Indy. Jay's got a nice one on a flyline sardine. Good in there. Nope, no 100. It's not 100.
Forrest, come up to the bridge real quick.
Not 100. Force is busy.
It's like 40 pounder.
Thank you, guys.
Back up, back up.
Awesome.
Nice job.
Rod up, rods up, rods up.
Tip straight up.
Is it hooked in the mouth?